Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Justin Feldman from Feldman Physical Therapy and Performance, and we got our super student here, Mike Canino. So Mike's finishing up his last part of his last rotation, already a step ahead of everyone, passed the boards, ready to go.
Yeah.
So all that stands between him and a license is basically finishing up here, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Keep passing me.
That's it. No pressure, right?
Yeah.
All right, so as part of his last project here, finishing up his rotation, Mike's going to do a little project for us talking about baseball injury prevention. So he wrote a whole blog, did a whole bunch of social media posts, so we'll link to all those in the description below the video. But Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background with baseball, sort of why you picked this for a project, and then we'll talk about some of the injury prevention stuff.
Yeah, so my background with baseball is I was a college baseball player for 4 years, and then I helped out on the coaching staff on the strength conditioning side and the pitching side after I graduated in between undergrad and post-grad. So I have a pretty decent background in working with pitchers especially, and so that's why we picked this topic, because I think we could really put out some good education for those at the high school and the college level to help make sure they're healthy as long as possible.
So what are some of the big things you think that are like kind of that low-hanging fruit that's sort of easy for everyone to kind of get into that's missing for most athletes' programs?
So in terms of baseball, I think it really comes down to having a regimented strength schedule, like in terms of training and developing that nice foundation of strength. Because there's always been this like stigma around baseball players that they shouldn't lift and they shouldn't be strong because you'll get too bulky and you won't be able to move. Well, it's actually the opposite. So we're developing all this mobility by throwing and swinging and running, and now we're neglecting that strength component. That's where a lot of guys get hurt because they have all this range of motion, but they can't control it.
All right, so as you sort of get into that, what are there easy things that you think people should be adding in? Are there things you think people shouldn't be doing? I guess let's start there. What do you think people should avoid?
So in terms of what people should avoid is that they should really keep an eye on how much stress they're accumulating throughout the year. So rather than trying to stretch that year out, especially for the high school players, past September into like October, November, and playing all these extra tournament games when you could be developing that strength, I think that's something they could avoid. That's an easy giveaway.
Just sort of take that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think too, especially now you see so much of this like one sport specialization, and then they sort of like they're in season year round. What about strength training wise, like exercise wise, easy things to throw in?
I think it really comes down to there's a lot of good material out there, especially from Feldman PT, about just learning the basics.
He's just saying that, trying to
Yeah,
make that really great.
plug.
Yeah.
No, but just in general, like get into a gym, find someone who really knows what they're doing, whether it's if your high school has a strength conditioning coach or if your college has one. Really try and get in there and just get some type of regimented schedule. Just exposing yourself to some type of stimulus could really go a long way.
How many days a week do you think people should be doing that? Let's say like start off like in season, then maybe off season. How should that?
So in season, I would say like 2 to 3 days is honestly pretty good because you're going to be accumulating a lot of volume, throwing, and just other stressors during the in season. Off season, I'll probably stretch it out to like 4 or 5 days a week.
All right.
I think that's more doable.
Nice. Good. So I know we got a couple exercises in the sort of the social media side of this stuff we'll go through. What are the like big ones?
So big ones that we hit on is some hamstring strength, midline stability, and creating stability within the throwing motion. Like as we were saying, we generate all this mobility, but a lot of guys are actually super weak in those positions. So trying to develop more stability throughout that throwing motion is really going to yield some good benefits.
Yeah. I think that's something too, like we talk a lot about here with, as you work with all these different populations, you see these people who are either like super tight and stiff, and then as you start to try and get them to like loosen up and build mobility, that's like one of the things we're always cautioning people about is like, you've got to make sure you replace some of that stiffness with strength. Same thing goes for people that are hypermobile in general. We got to make you strong in all those ranges of motion. I think one of the things, I don't know, I copied it from somebody else, but basically it was like, talking about the idea that with all that range of motion, the more you have, like the more responsibility you have to be strong in it. And so it might take like even a little bit more work to be strong there than something else.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good way to put it.
So I think that's a great place. We could kind of leave it there. Definitely check out all that. Definitely check out all Mike's content. We'll link to all that stuff below. And it's been fun having you in the clinic, man. Enjoy. and we'll definitely see you around.
Yeah, thanks for
All
having me.
right.
Yeah,
Good work.
thanks.